What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Viking Actual here. Today I'm going to be doing the third part of the PvP sets. So we have previously looked at the defensive sets, we have looked at our front bar offensive sets. We're going to be finishing off today that kind of genre with our mythic sets for PvP. Make sure to go and check out the other videos so you can kind of put all these videos together and make the best build for you. Alternatively, using one of my builds that's on one of the channel, maybe adapting it to better suit your playstyle. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. I have 7 sets today. We have 2 honourable mentions, and then we have a top 5 PvP mythic sets, in my personal opinion. We'll start with the honourable mentions, and then we will go into the top 5. So starting off, our number 7 is Ring of the Pale Order. Not a really common one, certainly something that I wouldn't be using for PvP if you're doing something like Battlegrounds, and I think that's what's holding it back from being higher on this list. So in our 7th place, it is very specifically designed for a solo player. So looking at the buff that it gives you, obviously it's a one-piece mythic, so all your damage that you deal, you restore 20% of that damage back as health, but that value is decreased by 4% per ally you are grouped with. So for example, BG's completely useless. You're going to be in there with 8, maybe sometimes 4 people. It's going to be such a diminishing return, it's not going to be worthwhile. However, Open World Cyrodiil, Imperial City, if you're someone that likes to play maybe with other people but not in a group, this could be the set for you. If you're lacking that healing factor but you're really high damage, 20% return on something like a Nightblade's Assassin damage, where you're dealing like 15,000 damage, that could be huge. That could be your health sustain. So while it's quite niche, I think it is still quite applicable in PvP, and that's why it's made the list, but only as an honourable mention, because of the fact that it doesn't really work in BGs, and it doesn't work for group content. It also limits all of your healing, that you can only be healed by yourself. Pets, if you've got a build that, and obviously companions don't work in PvP. So I think it has application, but it is very niche, which is what is holding us back. So number 7, Ring of the Pale Order. People may hate me for the next one, but our next honourable mention, number 6, Talk of the Last Aelid King. Now some people are going to hate me because they love it. I think it kind of falls into the same category as the last one, where for me it seems quite niche, and while it does give you a lot, I think it really does limit you by taking away all of your sets. So, you know, for someone that quite likes playing like Pyrobrand, that light attack, that pressure, you know, even the tankiness of like a Mark of Pariah, this will take all of that away. Admittedly, it reduces your damage by 15%, adds 1,300 weapon and spell damage, and then 500 of each of your recoveries. I think it has application. Again, I think you can run it if you don't really want to have to be running any specific set, that you just want to be looking at the passives of heavy, armor, medium. Maybe it's a really good stand point or start point for your PvP journey. For me, I think that I would prefer to run sets. I think there's a lot more diversity, a lot more potential having 2 sets plus monster sets and all those things, because, you know, with your allotment of the armor pieces, the jewelry and the weapons, you can run 2 5 pieces, a monster set and a mythic. So there's 3 sets there running concurrently. You know, even if you didn't want to use a monster set like I do on my Berserker build, you can then run a trial set or an arena set. And I think for one mythic, there isn't enough there for me to justify losing out on all of those different avenues. However, I have seen people use it to get crazy high weapon and spell damage, so it does make the list because it is usable. It is 100% usable in PvP. I just don't like how much it limits gameplay, your style, so that's why it is at number 6 on our honourable mention. Looking at our next mythic in our number 5 slot. Last patch, this was the meta. Everyone was using it. It hasn't necessarily been nerfed. I think that just with the change in meta, with subclassing, it has just kind of fallen down by the wayside a little bit. So has dropped essentially from what was, I think, position 1 in my opinion, down to now what is now position 5. And this is the Saint and the Seducer. While in combat, you gain one of 5 random major buffs, which changes every 10 seconds. So for that whole 10-second duration, you will hold on to that major buff. And then enemies within 12 meters of you gain one of 5 minor debuffs, depending on which buff you have. So, for example, if you have Major Berserk, the enemies around you will be applied Minor Maim. If you have Major Resolve, the enemies around you Minor Breach. If you applied Major Force, they are applied Minor Brittle. If you're Major Evasion, they're Minor Vulnerability. And if you're Major Courage, you're Minor Cowardice. It was a really, really meta set. I used it for a very, very long time. And it was really, really good. Other than the Major Resolve, all of those, the Major Berserk, Major Force, Major Evasion, Major Courage, all have really, really good potential and are all really solid buffs. The only problem that it does have is the fact that it is completely random. Ideally, from that whole list, for me, looking at a damage perspective, if I'm going into a crit build, I want that Major Force. That's basically out of that. That's what I want. Obviously, Major Berserk would be nice and Major Courage would be nice, but if I'm not building into that, I just want the Major Force. And the fact it's only active for 10 seconds, and then it's basically, RNG of whatever comes around next. It's not as good as it once was, particularly with a meta that you need as much damage as possible, because players can be tanky, but then again you also need to be taking out players as fast as possible, so that they then can't take you out. So still a usable set. I have sometimes run it since update 46, update 47, but it has, I think, fallen with the new meta and new mythics being introduced. So number 5, Saint and Seducer. Our next one, number 4. I mean, there are some really, really good mythics, and deciding placements has been exceptionally hard. But for number 4, I'm going to go for American Ring of Majesty. To quickly give you an overview, so for every set that you have 3 or more pieces in, so that is, you potentially on your build could get 3, 4, but in a traditional setup of 2 5 pieces, a monster or arena set, and then a mythic, you will only have 2. So for most builds that use this, it will give you 200 weapon and spell damage, and around about 2,500 armor. That doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're actually using it, you can really feel the extra tankiness and the extra damage, and obviously the weapon and spell damage also applies to your heals, so it does make you more survivable. So I've seen this used quite frequently. It is interchanged sometimes with another mythic, which we will talk about a little bit later, but a really, really solid choice, and definitely one that I have seen utilised, and I think you definitely should try if you want that mythic that kind of bridges the gap between it's a defensive and an offensive, because the weapon and spell damage applies to both, and obviously the armour is just pure tankiness. The reason it's only at number 4, I think it's just purely because I think it is outshined by some of our other mythics on this list. I don't think it's bad, and I don't think there's any actual negatives to it. Obviously, there is no debuff on you, The only requirement is that you're wearing armor pieces, and obviously most armor pieces have a requirement of having 5 or more pieces to gain the full potential of that armor set. And then, you know, if you wanted to run something like Potentes from your Cyrodiil, that's a 3-piece set, so you could interchange that, potentially get an extra 100 weapon spell damage, and an extra 1157 armor, but entirely up to you. So a really, really nice mythic item, but I think is just overshadowed with current metas by some of our others. So number 4, Moroccan Ring of Majesty. Number three. For those that are new to PvP or are playing in potentially an area that doesn't have great server connectivity and you're suffering with lag, this one generally can be a game changer. The number of times that so much is going on the screen and so many people because of subclassing and everything else, there's just so many effects on the ground that I've died because I haven't been able to swap to my back bar because of lag to hit my burst heal. The next mythic completely will remove that. So number 3, we have Oaken Soul Ring. For those of you who don't know, it is an absolutely fantastic mythic. It does come with a debuff, but sometimes that simplifies the gameplay, that it actually makes you play better. You don't have to worry about bar swaps, you don't have to worry about uptime on any of your buffs. It's basically run around, slash and hit, and that is it. So to quickly go through it as fast as I possibly can, because there are so many buffs that this gives you, it gives you more than any normal build probably would. So while equipped, you are unable to swap between your primary and back bar weapons. So you will only have 1 bar, which means 5 skills, 1 ultimate, and only 1 weapon. So you do have that you don't get to swap. You only get 1 weapon, and you only get limited on skills. However, you will not need any of your buff skills, for example like Betty, because while you have it active, you gain Minor Berserk, Minor Courage, Major Brutality, Major Sorcery and Major Prophecy, Major Savagery, Minor Force, Minor Protection, Major Resolve, Minor Mending, Minor Fortitude, Minor Intellect, Minor Endurance, Minor Heroism, Minor Slayer, Aegis, and Empower. Those last 3, all PvE. Going through those as a breakdown, you've got all of your regens. You've got Intellect, Endurance, and Fortitude. So all of your resource recoveries is boosted, which instantly increases your survivability. Amazing. You have 100% uptime on a Major Resolve, which means that you no longer will need any armor buffs, unless you want it for an actual damage shield. You then have all of your buffs that you get from like Betty, increasing your weapon and spell damage, and you also get all of your crit chance. So all of those buffs, those essential buffs, covered in a 1-piece mythic, which means that you don't need to get buffs from any of your armor pieces or any of your skills. So while it looks like you've lost a lot, you actually haven't. It's given you 5 skills which you can purely focus on healing and damage. So when I'm making a build with an Oaken Soul Ring, I'll normally go for Vigor, Healing Soul as my heals, and then a 3 setup of a spammable, an execute, and then 1 to basically play around with, potentially a stun, or something else to help you with your damage. And that is basically it. It simplifies PvP so much that if you're struggling to get to grips with the game, I cannot recommend enough trying an Oaken Soul build, because it will make it so much more simple, so much more playable for you to get into. So number 3, Oaken Soul Ring. Number 2, I would have loved to put this in first place, but current meta has made me bow down to the number 1. But in number 2, you've seen it in most of my builds, Malakath's Band of Brutality. It is the counter to the current meta. So if you're wanting a non-meta build, this is it. So increases your damage done by 16%, but decreases your critical damage done by 50%. Now, with the current meta of critical damage, unless you're crazy like me and run Mark of Pariah, most people are running Rallying Cry, which gives you no buffs to your armor other than your crit resistance, because that's what you need at the moment. Everyone is running crit damage. So if everyone's got that up, that sometimes devalues crit damage. So the decrease in crit damage on occasions isn't actually that impactful. However, increasing your damage done by 16%, if they have a Rallying Cry on the back bar, that gives them no resistances to that. So it is currently the off-meta best option, because if everyone is running Rallying Cry, which they likely are, because of the crit damage meta, they have no counter to this. They have no resistance to this. And it will boost all of your damage output. So it's what I use on my anti-meta Berserker build, which has no crit damage in it at all, because it just boosts those numbers. And on that build I managed to reach 80% increased damage. And if they're running Rallying Cry, it means they have absolutely no defense to that unless they have a damage shield or they block. So number 2 are off-meta, anti-meta Malakas Band of Brutality. Really recommend it if you're looking to go down a different route to what is currently the norm. And then finally, number 1. I think these two easily could be tied. You have the off-meta and the meta. But our new meta Mythic, Monomyth Reforged. I'll quickly tell you what it is. So while in combat and on your primary bar, so your bar number 1, you gain Major Force, Minor Berserk, and Minor Vulnerability. So you have 2 buffs, a major and a minor buff, and then you have 1 minor debuff applied to yourself, which increases your damage taken, but you also gain increased damage output by 5% and increased critical damage by 20%. So if you are a crit damage focused build, this is amazing. Not only are you dealing increased raw damage, you're dealing increased crit damage. It is fantastic. So I really do recommend that. And then on your back bar, secondary bar, you gain major protection, which increases your survivability and resistances, minor vitality, increasing your heals, but you will then get minor timidity, which drains your ultimate. But from what I've noticed, it doesn't actually make that big of a deal. You won't feel it, because if you're in combat hitting other enemies, you're topping it back up as fast, well, faster even, than if you're losing it. If you're getting hit, you're topping it up faster than you're losing it. This one came out with the new update. It is very much in line with the meta. Most people have included it on their build because it is so in line with the current meta. So at number 1 we have Monomyth Reforged. That is essentially our build. Well, not our build, that is our top 5 list with our 2 honourable mentions. I hope that was informative. I hope everyone has taken something away that they can then use in their own builds. And I hope everyone has enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And always like and subscribe. It is always really, really appreciated. But as always, I will catch you in the next one.